of Fansville with our live reaction here of Michigan getting it done, beating Army in double overtime here. 24-21 is the final score as Michigan escapes, did not play well. So let's go through all of this game. I've got a couple of reactions from around the country and some games out there. Looking at you, Syracuse. Told you shouldn't be ranked. So let's look at this one first. Michigan. How worried should Michigan be with what they look like so far through 2 weeks? I would say pretty worried. Now, I think these are things that you can fix, right? I mean, you can fix ball security. You can do things in the ball handling in the back end, in particular the quarterback, Shea Patterson, that allow you to have better ball security. But that is an issue. This was a team that did not put the ball on the ground, did not turn the ball over at a high clip a year ago. And this year, it has been the opposite. And in a game in which Army was going to limit the number of possessions they had anyways, getting those taken away from you with turnovers is just a killer, an absolute killer. They did not run the ball all that great. I know that the numbers ultimately, Steve, I think the numbers ultimately, what was it, only 108 rushing yards for Michigan, 2.4 per? 2.4 per? Isn't this the second game they've won by rushing it under 2.9 yards under Jim Harbaugh? That's bad, man. They got to fix something. They kept talking about how this new system was going to be better. Here's something that I did not see from the new system today. And I'm kicking myself for not talking about it more during the broadcast, but I thought this was supposed to be more like zone read, RPO centric. It looked just like handoff into the middle that gets stuffed for, 2 yards, then drop back and find nobody out there, and Shea Patterson misses with a throw because he's either, injured or not seeing it very well. That's what it looked like to me. So I'm concerned for Michigan right now. They've got a bye week before they're going to head to Madison. Gus and I and Ginny will be there in Madison. They've got to get things fixed because if they play like they did today, Wisconsin will beat them. There's no doubt in my mind. Army really should have beat them. And that's the next place I'll go. Just quickly on Army. Army's going to watch this tape, and they're going to be so frustrated that they basically lost on what I would call 2 play calls, offensive play calls. And it's because they did not stick to who they are. All right, they constantly talk about the analytics of going forward on 4th down, and that's why we're just going to run the fullback on 3rd down because we don't care, and so on and so forth. And 4 things happen when you throw the ball, and 3 of them are bad. That's a big thing that they talk about. And guess what? They were down in their 3rd and goal from the 5, field goal range in the second half, a chance to go 21-7. What do? They throw a pick. Why'd they throw it on 3rd down? If you're going to believe in a system and run the fullback, then run the fullback. Then in overtime here, it's 3rd and 11. I know that maybe you weren't confident in the kicker, but I got to be honest. I think a toss sweep and option play is a better option for Army than trying to throw the football. And they ended up getting a strip sack, game over right there. They don't even get to attempt the field goal to tie the game to take it into a 3rd overtime. Now let's look at the Michigan defense. The Michigan defense, it's hard to evaluate in a game like this. I think overall this defense is going to be very good. Don Brown's going to get them ready to play, and they're going to play very good. They gave up 205 rushing yards today on, 65 plays. 61 of them were rushes. They only gave up 3.4 yards per rush. So I thought that they played pretty well for the most part defensively. I don't think that that's an area where they need help. They need help on the offensive side. They did not run the football well. I don't think they threw the football all that well. They put the ball on the ground. They were sloppy. There was penalties. And if they play like this moving forward, then they're going to lose 2, 3, maybe 4 times during the course of the year. They changed to this offense for a very specific reason, because they could not get over the hump when it came to evenly matched opponents like the Ohio States of the world, even though, they can be undermanned at times against Ohio State. And they thought they needed an offense that could go win a shootout. That offense ain't winning a shootout. What I just saw. So there's some concerns for Michigan. We'll see them against Wisconsin. We'll see if they can grow. Because here's the other thing I do know. We've seen teams evolve and build and get better, and we need to allow for that during the course of the season. Last year, Texas lost to Maryland in week 1. Sam Ehlinger did not look good at all. And then at the end of the year, he's got confetti raining down on him. And he's saying, we're back to Holly Rowe as they just throttled Georgia physically, running for 178 yards to Georgia's 73. So teams can evolve and get better, but that has to happen here with Michigan. They've got to get better or else they're going to lose even before the Ohio State game. Patterson, I was expecting to see more McCaffrey, in particular after Patterson started putting the ball on the ground and after he started getting loose in the second half with some of the accuracy issues. We did not see that. We saw McCaffrey come in for one play. Then we saw him come in and kind of spell Patterson when Patterson had the cramp issues. He just handed the football off again. Where were the zone read plays? Where were the RPO plays? Steve, did you see them? Steve's like the eyes of the network in the booth here. There just weren't many of them. So I don't know if they were trying to protect Shea Patterson. If you're trying to protect Shea Patterson, put Dylan McCaffrey in the game. I just didn't understand the game plan. And this is going to be a real growth opportunity for Josh Gattis. Remember, it's his first time he's calling plays. So he's going to have to grow from this game as well. Now I want to talk briefly about Ohio State. I thought Ohio State and Cincinnati was going to be a really good game. Remember, Cincinnati had won 11 games. They had beaten UCLA in week 1 for the second straight year, by the way. Luke Fickell was coming back to the Ohio State, and you knew his team was going to be motivated. And then Ohio State just throttled them. That defense clearly is the defense that we saw in the first half against FAU. I had some quote-unquote concerns about Ohio State after last week's game, and Ohio State fans were all over me and saying, oh, it was just the backups, it was just the backups. I didn't believe that was the case at the time, and now, that probably was the case. I was probably wrong. I don't necessarily, when a team's out there, a team's out there. If your backups are against their backups or so on and so forth. So I stand corrected. I think Ohio State going into the game last week, I thought, boy, this team is playoff potential. They're really good. They could win a national championship. Then I saw them play, and I was like, no, we'll see. We'll see how Fields develops from the pocket. We'll see how that defense evolves, and particularly with their schematics moving to a zone scheme. And they've clearly done a nice job, and they are throttling Cincinnati. Fields is a guy that as they develop game plans to utilize his skill set, they will just get better and better and better offensively. So when my poll comes out this week, I will move Ohio State above Michigan after seeing what I've seen in the first 2 weeks of the season. That's an admission for me, and Michigan will be moving down. Ohio State will be moving up. I thought today's performance from Ohio State was mighty impressive. Last thing I want to hit on here is something that I've been talking about, and Steve even more so has been talking about for a long time. You know what I'm about to talk about. Syracuse. Guess what Steve calls Syracuse? Shout, Steve. What do you call Syracuse? Frauds! That's what he calls them. Really, the whole ACC outside of Clemson is just really bad. Maryland, how about that? They hung 79 on, now I'm blanking who they hung 79 on. They scored 79 points in their first game, and then they're just rolling Syracuse and Dino Babers. Everyone was asking me, like, why isn't Syracuse in your top 25? Because they're not very good. And Maryland trouncing them today. And good on Maryland. And that just makes that Big Ten East, this Big Ten East, even more difficult moving forward for teams like Michigan, for teams like Ohio State, for teams like Michigan State, for teams like Penn State. I think it's the toughest division in football. At least in college football. I know the SEC West is going to have something to say about that, in particular tonight as 2 SEC West teams play huge games, Texas A&M at Clemson, and obviously LSU at Texas. So it's going to be a huge night of college football. This has been a crazy one, man. I got to tell you, if Michigan continues to play like this, it ain't happening in Ann Arbor this year. Something tells me that they'll get better. I can't wait to see them in 2 weeks. We'll be live, Big Noon Saturday. Gus and I, Jenny on the sideline in Madison, Wisconsin, as the Wolverines' next opponent. They will take on Wisconsin in that ball game. So 24-21, folks, against Army. And Army, for the second time in 2 years, takes a top 10 team in their own house to overtime. They did it today to Michigan. Good on the Army Cadets, man. I got to tell you, everything about that program I'm impressed with. I love Jeff Monken, and more in particular, those kids. Guys like Kelvin Hopkins. I love Kelvin Hopkins. Kelvin, and all of you Army football players, thank you very much for your service, for your selflessness, in what you are about to embark on in the next 5 years, serving our country and protecting our country. It was an honor calling your football game, and you did yourselves very proud here in the big house. So that'll do it for In the Booth. This has been brought to you by Dr. Pepper. As always, it's the official drink of Fansville.